Thank you for joining us for this exclusive series of discussions on key factors for business expansion to the U.S., created by Bank Leumi USA together with Leumi Israel and Kלכליסט. This series is focused on best practices for scaling up your business as you expand to the U.S. Supporting tech companies has been a main focus for Leumi USA for many years. We leverage on the strength of our deep global relationship and our presence in New York, Silicon Valley, and Israel to offer access to financial products and services designated for fast-growing tech companies operating globally. As a local U.S. player, Leumi USA is familiar with the nuances of the tech market and its changing trends. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Nir Inbar for an insightful conversation with two founders that successfully expanded their business to the U.S., Weka.io and OneTouch. Nir is a longtime colleague currently acting as a manager at the Leumi Tech Business Center in Israel. Nir has 20 years of global banking experience after serving as a credit officer and a manager for Bank Leumi USA in New York and in Silicon Valley.
Thank you, Ori, and thank you for having us. My name is Nir Inbar. I'm a group head at Leumi Tech in Israel, and I was relocated twice to the US, to the West Coast and to the East Coast, expanding our Leumi Tech brand into the US market. With me today, Omri Palmon, founder and COO of Weka, and Zak Rubinstein, founder of OneTouch. And we'll be happy to have a discussion about expanding your business to the US and the do's and the don'ts and any other tips that we can share with the audience from based on your experience and your know-how. We'll start with a short introduction, a self-introduction about you and the company. So, Omri.
My name is Omri Palmon. I'm one of the co-founders of Weka. Weka is a startup in the storage field. We're developing the next generation file system solution. About 120 people, half of them in the US, half of them in Israel. We chose the model of R&D in Israel and headquarters, sales, marketing, management in the US. That's who we are.
Zak?
Hi, I'm Zak. I'm the CEO of OneTouch. Together with Yitzhak Asraf and Dmitry Shevchenko, we founded OneTouch in the era of GDPR and CCPA and all sorts of privacy regulations, where the challenge was really understanding where personal data is. So we do a network-based analytics to see how customers or enterprises are using sensitive data at any given moment in time.
Okay. So you both had your relocations back in the days, and so you had personal experience of relocated and also business experience in terms of expanding your business. And today, after COVID, there are a lot of questions sent to the air about the need of physical relocation to the US versus staying local. So there's like models that are built in terms of doing that. So if you can share with us, Omri, what was the point of time that you really understood that Weka needs to expand the business to the US and how you go about that, how you started that?
So in that sense, it's quite simple. We understood that in day zero. Like we're doing enterprise infrastructure. Our customers are large corporations. It's sales that are hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. Our OEMs and distributors are all US-centric. It was obvious from day zero that although R&D founding is in the US, eventually there will be a shift of the business to the US. This is where most of the capital is, where our market is, where the distributors are. So it's not only, we have also sales in Europe, we also sales in APAC, but the US is still the prime market.
So early on, you decided that as a founder that you should build some kind of an really on-ground operations in the US, and then, what was the first step for doing that?
So I don't know the first step for us was not necessarily, we tried like a little bit of multiple models, but eventually one of my co-founders, one of my partners relocated to the US, and he's managing the company from the US. This is where large like mega corporations are your OEMs. They want the CEO in their time zone, in their area, speaking their language not as English, but their cultural and local language. There was no point in time for this decision. It was obvious from the day of like the first presentation of round A that that's how we're going to work. And for our type of model of sales that are very high touch, very sophisticated, nobody even considered anything else. Justly or not, I don't know, but there was no like a process of finding out that's a solution. It was assumed to be the solution from day one.
Zak, what can you share with us about your experience?
I think it's divided into different areas of the business. So I'll get to sales in a minute, but in terms of financial operations, having a financial operation in the US, it's beneficial from the get-go for a few reasons. Firstly, if you're a startup seed stage, fundraising, there's some investors that want to see that you've already got a track record of having an account, that you have a business where customers will want to see that they're transacting with an American account as opposed to sending the money. There's benefits in terms of tax, of splitting out your business operations versus your R&D operations. And so then the question then becomes, which country is the best one to do that? And so you can look at Europe and you can look at North America. And I think that North America is more of an obvious choice than Europe for a couple of reasons. We're also a high-touch solution. And in Europe, it tends to be a lot more partner focused. So you actually need to get the buy-in from the partners to resell you, but they only tend to come in when they see other people reselling you. So it's a lot more difficult to get traction in Europe. When you look at North America, I was once speaking to the director of security at Nordstrom, and I said, tell me, why are you guys so helpful to me? So he said, it's all about the American dream. We all believe in the American dream. We genuinely like Israel, and we want to help you achieve that. So there's a big openness, I think, with America. And also, America, Israel, and South Korea are the top 3 innovative countries in the world. So there's like a kindred spirit with Americans. So it just becomes a lot easier. And as Omri said, it's high touch, but it's also an emotional purchase, right? So someone's taking a bet on you as a startup. They need to see you. They need to trust you. They need to believe you. There's going to be problems when you have your solution.
And when you say see you, it's actual...
Yeah, see you. When you first start, because everyone knows that if you're a seed stage startup, there's going to be problems with the technology. It's kind of, no one talks about it, but if you're actually there and, you take out, like these small things, you take out a credit card at a meal and it's an American bank or, it's an American, like these small things just help get that comfort, I think, from customers at the very early stages.
And really, if we get to the point of how important it is to live there as a founder, as the leader of the company, versus traveling back and forth, having some kind of presence there.
I think it depends on your marriage, really, actually. My wife is quite happy for me to travel there and leave her alone. But when I actually lived there, it was a lot easier. Your day was 9 to 5, and then you had the evenings to yourself, and you had Sundays as a day off. So, which is really just something from God. And in Israel, of course, your week starts Sunday morning and ends Friday afternoon. So it's so a much higher quality of life from my perspective living there, and also the driving there is nicer. So
yes, and the food is great as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Omri, if you can, elaborate a little bit about your thoughts about which type of businesses may want to stay local and still penetrate the US market, and what type of industry really have to have a physical location and an operation in the US. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I'll share my thoughts, but I'll start that this is a very acute question and a very specific one. So I don't think I can give like a list of if you're in this industry or of that situation, then you should do that. I think anyone getting such advices should always look on the root cause of the advice and make very conscious, intelligent decision about his or her business specifically. But I think there's two major dimensions. One is whether your customers need the face-to-face. Face-to-face does not have to be the physical face-to-face. You can do a Zoom session across the Silicon Valley, but it's more the cultural face-to-face. Mm-hmm. So even in our small Israel, you will notice that across different ethnic and cultural groups, the sales teams are always from the same group. It's always easier. Even if it's being done on a Zoom session, it's easier from someone in New York to buy from someone in New Jersey than in someone in Israel. So I think the first question is whether your sales process is either on the extreme, very, very zero touch or low touch on the internet, but people don't care where they buy from, and therefore they can buy from an Israeli marketing sales team, or is it really a face-to-face trust, and then it goes all the way up. The second is the talent pool. Israel has a lot of talent in many fields and less talent in others. So I think by the time today, we have an amazing talent pool of selling.
Can you give like an example?
ASICs to large vendors, and I think enterprise solutions, of course, security and cyber. And I think if you try to build here a consumer-based company, you would fight harder to find the right people that have actually done it in the past. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying anything the choice, but I think you have certainly to look on, one, the type of interaction you have with your customers and your partners and channels and OEMs, and other on the talent pool, whether it's available in Israel in masses, not just a single person, but you can scale tomorrow to 20 if you're successful, or whether it's something you want to take advantage of a different talent pool.
Okay. You know, we spoke about the type of businesses that, needs to go out and then expand their presence in the U.S. Let's take it to a different angle in terms of what type of business opportunities show themselves to you when you have a presence there versus going back and forth.
So it's an interesting question because my mind isn't quite made up about that. You know, on the one hand, we spoke about the need to get in front of customers for them to trust you, and I've got personal experience where, you know, deals can be broken or made over a dinner through one little fact that's told to you. But interestingly enough, next week we're going to announce a major partnership that was completely done through COVID, where we've never personally met, and it's a major global company that's going to resell our product, and we've never met any of them face to face, and really the technology that our R&D built spoke for itself. So I think that, you know, cybersecurity is vast. In some areas there's a lot of competition. In the area that we are, privacy, there's a lot of solutions out there that say what we do, and I think that if you manage to build the right relationship with the right big brothers, it's going to be a lot easier because it's very much about trust. Or if you have a SaaS-based security type solution, which is easy to try out, where there's no risk, but because we deal with a lot of sensitive data, it kind of just becomes a bit more difficult. So I'm not really sure if there's a hard and fast rule. I think it just depends on the stage of the company, the type of technology you've got. As I said, the marketing that we did enabled this large partner, big brother, as it were, to come, and understand our differentiator. So there's a lot of variables there.
But for you, it's working great in terms of.
Well, we have a talented team out. They're probably better than I am at what we do in terms of business development and sales over in the US. So I think they feel less comfortable putting me in front of a customer unless they really have to. That's where we've got to. But yeah, it just depends on the team, and it's difficult to know. But I would say that to anyone thinking of going out, they should just speak to a lot of people and figure out if it's really for them or not, because you do burn a lot of money. If you're a religious person going out there, or if you've got 4 kids you want to put in private school, if you're living on the east or west coast, you need to be earning $250,000, which is a lot of burn for a small company. So I think there's just a lot of factors there.
So preparation, and a little bit more preparation before you go out. It's very important, you know. Omri, let's speak a little bit about the investors' angle, and you know, based on your experience, how they relate to companies that are, you know, like 5 minutes drive from Sand Hill Roads versus in the Middle East.
I think there's certainly an advantage to being in the Silicon Valley or in the US in general, but I think it is not as essential as it used to be. Mm-hmm. So it's certainly on the upside. Some VCs would not invest in a company with management not in the Silicon Valley. It would certainly be easier, but I would look on it as part of like the pros and the cons, like every business doing, and not treat it. There's enough money in Israel. There's a representation of quite a few major US VCs that actually invest from the US funds directly. Mm-hmm. So I would not treat the investment angle as the reason to change the location of the executive management.
And what about valuations? Is there any difference?
I don't know. Really, I don't think anyone can say. So on one hand, of course, you hear about larger valuations in the Silicon Valley, but that does not mean that if a certain startup would relocate, it would get these higher valuations.
Yeah. So focus on creating a value for the investors and worry less about
I don't think
the numbers.
I don't think anyone can really in a confident way say valuations for the same company at Silicon Valley would be higher because it's just different companies. Mm-hmm. And even if it would be, that's certainly not the reason to relocate. There's a huge cost to relocation, huge internal friction, huge personnel, much limited talent pool. Mm-hmm. The valuation is not a reason to do that, in my belief.
And just for ending our session, if you know, one personal tip from you, Zak, to really someone who's just now thinking about that, and what from your experience?
Have a supportive wife.
Supportive wife.
Yeah, it's a tough road, whichever way, and they need to take your highs, your lows, and of course amazing partners as well. You know, and we were lucky with our initial VCs at JVP to be very, very supportive of us. So just choose the right people, I suppose. Throughout. All relationships all around you. 360 right relationship choice, I think, is
very important.
Yeah,
and the right bank, of course.
The right bank. Yeah.
Omri,
I think choosing the right people, having the right backup from home, and having an internal understanding that this is going to be difficult and you will have to try several times and reiterate and not just assume. Most founders, especially in Israel, are coming from engineering background. And in engineering, if you're doing things disciplined and well-designed, usually you make it on time and not like on the first iteration reasonably well. And if there is problems, you know more or less to predict how much they will be. But when you're doing something out of your focus area, out of your domain of expertise, you should be prepared to a lot more unknowns.
Okay, so thank you for joining us to this session, and I wish you both plenty of success.
Sababa.
Godspeed.
Thank you.
Sababa. Tada.
Tada.
Right.